Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. In this video, I'm going to use this floral print layered stencil. And I've used this in previous videos, and I'm going to do kind of a bit of a spotlight technique. I saw a card somewhere online, different than this, but somewhat similar-ish in the technique, and I wanted to try it with a layered stenciled background. So I'm taping my paper down to my media mat here, and I'm going to tape my stencil down just to make sure that it's not going to move in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to do one of these backgrounds in a grayscale, and then I'm going to do one in colored. So for the first one, I'm going to do the grayscale, and I'm using Lost Shadow and Pumice Stone. I'll have everything listed and linked down in the description below if there's something that I happen to miss. So I'm going to go through all of the layered stencils, and I'm going to do the largest area with the lighter of the grays, and then the smaller areas with the darker of the grays, which is the pumice stone. By doing this, you get a really cool looking image. It's funny to see a floral image in a grayscale, but it also looks kind of cool. So I'm using some nice ink blending brushes here. I can control exactly how much or how little ink I put on with these blending brushes. I like to go both clockwise and counterclockwise to make sure I get all of the edges to my stencil. So make sure if you find that you're only getting one edge of the stencil, it's probably because you're only circling your brush in one way. These layering stencils are from Paint Fresh Studio, and they're great because they have little notches in them that tell you exactly where to line them up for 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it's very handy. The other thing it also has is it says layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, etc. So you know exactly what order they go into, and you don't have to really guess with that. You can also tell from those labelings which side up and which way they go on your print. So my grayscale one is done, and now I'm ready to do the colored one. The one thing you do want to make sure to do is when you're taping your pieces down is that you don't want to have your tape in any areas that are open from the stencil. Otherwise, that's going to affect your print. So you'll see me every once in a while, I'll move them just to make sure that it's not in the way. These papers are both 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So the prints are going to be exactly the same place. They're going to be exactly the same position, just different colors. I also made sure to completely clean my stencils off so that I didn't have any gray ink still left on the stencils to contaminate the ink. So you do want to make sure that if you do different colors for different layers, that you are cleaning your stencils off. I'm just using dye inks here so they wash off really, really easy under a running tap, and then dry them off because you don't want to ruin your prints underneath if your stencils are still a little bit moist. These layered stencils make it really, really quick and easy to create a background. I'm doing kind of an even layer of color. Often I'll do darker towards the center of the flowers or towards the base of my stems. But for this particular one, I just wanted an even all over color. Now that both my backgrounds are done, we can start creating the card front. It's really interesting to see both prints knowing they're exactly the same print, but in one in grayscale and one in color. I find it really interesting. So I've got a Hero Arts Infinity rectangle die here, and I'm going to cut a rectangle. I want that to be the focal point in the center of the card. And by placing it on there and taping it in place, I can make sure to choose exactly which part of the print I have on the front of my card. You may notice when I do die cutting, I often flip my paper over and I have the blade side of the die facing up. In the Big Shot machine, the pressure comes from the top in the roller, and I find that by having the blade side up, I don't have a lot of die cutting issues. Now for the next rectangle I'm cutting a piece of pink. I wanted it to be a matte behind my colored layer there. I end up laying it out and I actually don't like it. The matte is a little bit too big for what I was wanting. So I end up with plan B, but just know that if you wanted to have a matte around your area here, you absolutely can do that. It's really personal preference. What I ended up doing was taking a Copic marker, taking the chisel end and just going along the end, the sides of those cardstocks. That way I still have that color that is framing it. It's just not nearly as big. It's just not nearly as bold. It's just a little bit more subtle, and I liked the look a lot better. Now I'm going to glue my colored print to my grayscale one, matching the design of the print perfectly. It's really, really easy to do. And then I wanted my grayscale one to be just slightly smaller to go onto the front of the card so that you could see a white mat around it. So once this is completely dry, you'll see I put a rectangle die around there. I tape it into place to make sure that it cuts exactly where I want it to, and I'm going to put it through my machine again. And then I'm also going to take a gray Copic marker that matches the tone of gray that I have on the card there. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the pink. I'm just going to go around the outside edge of that just to kind of create a bit of a matte. Once again, not nearly as bold as having a piece of cardstock under there, although that is certainly an option if you like that look better. It just wasn't what I had envisioned for my card. Once I had done that, I decided that it was just a little bit flat. Even though I had the difference between the grayscale and the color, it needed a little bit of something to shimmer. So I'm taking some Pewter mica spray here, and I lined my stencil up exactly where I wanted it to go with the pattern. And I'm just going to spray that mica spray on there and then let that completely dry and wash my stencil off while it's drying. While I'm waiting for that mica spray to dry, I decided to do some hot foiling and foil some sentiments for the front of the card. I have this variety pack of satin pastel foils, and the pink matched the pink on the card perfectly. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to foil a large hello and then a small you brighten my day. I just wanted something that kind of went with the theme of the grayscale compared to the color on the front of the card, and I thought this worked perfectly. So while I'm waiting for the Glimmer machine to warm up, I'm just getting my foil and my foil plates all ready. I'm going to put just a little piece of the satin foil on there and then my foil plates. I ended up choosing also a thanks die or a thanks foil plate to do at the same time, just so that I wasn't wasting part of the area. I'm making sure to have an area around them because I am going to cut them out. They have a little bit of a halo around them, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to have those dies to cut them out too close. And I'm using Spellbinder's yellow tape to hold everything in place, to tape it in place while I'm foiling. That way I make sure that I don't have my plates moving around. I find this is especially helpful with sentiment foil plates. For the larger ones, I don't necessarily find it as useful, but for the sentiments, I find taping it in place really helps. Once the Glimmer machine is hot, I put everything onto the base, put my plates on top, and press the timer button. And once that stops blinking, I put it through my Bake Shop machine. To do hot foiling, you need the heat from the Glimmer machine as well as the pressure from a die cutting machine. You can't do it with just one or the other. While I have my machine out and hot, I'm taking my Pink Fresh solid hot foil plate, and I'm foiling the negative piece of that foil. We might as well use as much of the foil as possible and not have anything go to waste. And it's a good thing I did this because in the end I chose to do the negative foiling instead of the positive one, because it just worked better with the card design. It just popped a little bit more. So that is the negative. The one where the sentiments are pink is the positive version. Now that I have those pieces foiled, I can line up my cutting dies. These foil plates come with cutting dies for them, so it works perfectly. You will want to make sure to tape them in place so things don't shift. And I'm using my mini trimmer to cut down that tiny sentiment there. I can have control over exactly where that sentiment is in the strip. Off camera, I did the same process with the negative sentiments. So here I'm showing you the positive here and how it looks on the card front. And you can see that it just doesn't really pop off of the card like it should. My lights are making that background look really, really white, which it's really not. It just worked a lot better to have the negative version of the sentiments on there. They just seem to pop out of the card a little bit better and showed up a little bit better. And you can see this right here with that little strip there, how it just looks it looks a lot nicer on the card. You can just see it a whole lot better. Once I had glued my sentiments down and let them dry, I decided it needed a little bit more shimmer. I had the shimmer from the mica spray on there, but it just needed a little bit more. I glued it to the card base, and then I decided to add some Stickles just to the center of the yellow flowers, just for a little bit of sparkle, and that really completed the card and finished everything off. Once I put those Stickles down there, I let them completely dry, and this is the finished result. Not the type of cards that I usually create, but I was quite pleased with the finished result. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous day.